Hey, it's Kevin. Taking a trip down memory lane today, back to December of 1973. What was I, 12 years old then? One of my favorite Christmas gifts. Christmas was never a big deal for us, but I got one of my favorite Christmas gifts in 1973. Yeah, I'm 47 years old now, and I probably still played with it until, gosh, sometime into the 1990s, I'm betting. I'd have to ask my wife if I was still playing with my AFX slot cars when we got together. I actually had it set up in a second bedroom for a long time. I've still got the track downstairs. I've still got tons of cars. And I kind of moan the fact that kids today aren't into slot cars. Slot cars had their heyday back in the 1960s. By the time my generation got into them in the 1970s, the interest was starting to wane a little bit. But the Aurora AFX and the Magna Plus or Magna G-Force or whatever they called the cars that were the next generation were pretty cool. They were based on real automobiles. I think that was the appeal to me. The first track I got, like I said, Christmas of '73, included a Chevy Camaro, which I actually ended up driving a Camaro. It was black, that was similar. This about because the front end looks like about a 1970 Camaro. This was actually worked really well on the tracks. It held to the track really well. In my first set along with it came a Porsche 917. Again, because the way the car was designed, didn't race as well on the track, so I didn't spend a lot of time with that. Sadly, these are not the originals. I've actually had to rebuy these. I believe I actually traded some of my original cars when I started getting a little too old for it at one time for some cassette tapes or something like that. For some reason I remember a Boz Scaggs cassette tape probably in the late 1970s or mid-1970s when I tired of it. I got back into it pretty quick, was actually doing some slot car racing again in college too. What I loved, as I said, was the attention to detail, or the similarities to real racing automobiles. I was a big fan of racer Mark Donahue. He drove the number 6 AMC Javelin, and this looks like his AMC Javelin that he rode. He was actually, I think, a spokesman too for AFX, so that's why they had that car. I always thought that was cool. I could pretend to be Mark Donahue for a short time. One of my favorite cars, and it crushed me when I spilled some gear oil on it and in my mind ruined it, was the UOC Shadow. I'm a Can-Am racer. I thought this was cool. I was based on an early 1970s Can-Am race car called the Shadow. UOC was the sponsor, a European sponsor. What was cool about it was, as I said on the let me try to tilt that so you can see it. On the top of the spoiler it says Shadow, and as I said, I got some gear oil on it and it smeared it and basically took that black sheen of Shadow right off there that was stenciled on there, and kind of nice and crushed it for me. Found this one on eBay a few years back and got it for a decent price. And, I actually ran it a few times and it runs really good, considering its age. Again, AFX, they were big in the 1970s. I had relatives in Chicago. I was born in Chicago, but we moved away. My grandmother lived in Chicago in the early 1970s. And the precursor to Toys R Us was called Children's Bargain Town USA. And they had a toy selection that was just incredible. I'll never forget just going and just staring at the AFX cars for hours. Usually my parents would let me get one, whether it was a piece of track or a car or something when we went, the few times we went. I always remembered that. Another of my favorite cars from the old AFX days was a car I actually wanted in real life. And I don't know why. It wasn't that great of an automobile. It's not a classic by any stretch of the imagination. It was the Datsun 510. And the Bree Datsun. It was a series of race cars that were kind of painted like this. I don't even know the race team. I loved the look of this car. I always thought it was so cool. I had a friend who actually had a 510 Datsun, and I just thought it was a good-looking little two-door automobile. I know I'm strange about that. I don't have any skills to work on automobiles, so I always kind of lived that fantasy through the slot cars. Sadly, I don't think kids today could care less about it, as I said. These slot cars sit in my kitchen in Ohio. At least some of them do. The ones I picked up recently, or not recently, in the last few years on eBay. And I sit there and dust them off and look at them every now and again and threaten I'm going to go play with them. I don't know with what time. Taking you back 35 years. Wow. A hobby that still thrills me. And maybe someday I'll find a nephew who will get into it and will want to play slot cars. It'd be kind of cool. I know it's at different times, aren't it? Have a great night. See you tomorrow on another video blog here on kevinmason.tv.